Okay. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. We made it to 2024, and we're really delighted. Susanne is joining us today from Oldenburg to give the first seminar in our new year. So thank you so much. Traveled all the way over this morning. So yeah, thank you for making the journey. And there's, as I said in the email, there's plans to go for a drink afterwards and for dinner. There's still slots available, so let me know if you want to join. It's more than welcome. Yeah, and with that, I mean, I'll hand over to you, Susanne, to talk about your research, and I'll come back at the end. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Should be good.
Okay, you want me to repeat it for the talk or not? No. Okay. Okay, I'm happy to be here, and I'm going to share a talk on prosocial embedded AI, and to make it a little bit clearer who I am and what I do. No, that didn't work. Maybe I should switch that off, what I tried before. My mouse in there? No. So whatever I did on my computer was not helpful. No. Now? The thing is, how do we get rid of this? Probably not. Sorry. Now that goes better. Okay. Yeah, here we are. So what I do is recently I say I do design interactive systems for people. I'm sure everybody in the room does the same thing. But to me, sometimes it's a bit surprising that even today you see systems that have not been designed for people. There was a very little incident at the end of last year. I went to an event that had a photo kiosk, sort of that people can come at the end and take nice pictures. And then it wasn't working. So the person responsible for setting it up went into the configuration menu. And that was like a 90s configuration manager. It was super difficult to manage. So no, digital products are not yet made for people. And I work all around application areas from health to industry to fabrication to work. So we do a lot of hardware. And I'm going to showing you some of the results that we have been working on. Good. So the talk is about prosocial embedded AI. So we need to talk about where do we find AI. We have to mention here that, of course, AI is a huge field, and the topic came up again. So we're talking about artificial intelligence technology that are making decisions, typically supported by, for example, deep neural networks, where the decision is not so easy. It's not rule-based. So there might be an aspect where it's not so super clear why a system made a decision or why a system is interacting in a certain way as you expected. So the question is where you meet it. If you ask people, you often see, okay, this is where we meet people. So this is an image taken from a very famous movie, Ex Machina. Hope some of the people in the room have seen it. Of course, it is not a robot. It's a real actor playing the machine, but it's in the idea that the AI will be humanoid and it will be interacting with you as if you had another living person. But actually, AI is not as this. It comes in very practical things. It comes with your Alexa in your smart home. we did a chatbot for an ADHD project. So it comes as a chatbot. It comes as an automated vehicle that has some AI in it. So it is everywhere. And of course, it's not the single entity. It is always embedded into something. Of course, there's a lot of mechanical aspects here. It's just a box. This comes on your iPhone, but the AI is actually embedded into everyday things. So explaining AI doesn't mean you explain a neural network, but you explain a whole system to people. So, and well, I think it's not new, and not only with the recent hype, it was clear that AI is everywhere. Actually, when we learn, when we collaborate, I understand that also a lot of research on knowledge work is done in this building, but also in agriculture, when we shop, when we work. So it's existing, and the anticipation is going to be part of our everyday life. But when we talk about AI, I also want to make another point clear, is that, of course, in UCLIC, this is a natural thing. Everything is situated in context, you know. This is not, we're designing this for this one individual, Susanne, or Duncan or Anna. So we are designing it for different people in different contexts. So we might design for an expert who doesn't need much explanation about a digital system, or maybe a novice. It's working at home or on the go. It might be your professional tool, but you maybe want to use it for your personal purposes. It can be happen in private, and it can be convenient, it can be dangerous. So we really need to address these areas individual. And also concluding this introductory section, we need to understand that it is always part of a social technical system. You have a first person, maybe who is also a user. You might have a second user. And if you think of things like AirPods, which are kind of convenient thing, maybe a delivery robot, maybe a drone, maybe a smartphone. There's a lot of research about that. Of course, it's not only you using a system, it's you using a system in a social technical context, meaning that if you use a smartphone, the other person thinks you are looking for your way, or you are distracted and not listening to her. If a rescue drone is coming to the first person here, the others might be irritated and even maybe have to make way to let the drone come. And the delivery robot might be bullied because you think, well, who needs a pizza delivered at their home? So there's a lot of aspects that needs to be considered. So it's not only a one-on-one, but a one-on-many relationship we are talking about. So, and this was about the embeddedness. So all the technology comes embedded, and we have to explaining, and we have to communicate the whole thing and not just this AI section in it. The next element, of course, why social and why even pro-social? So in our work, and I'm just trying to make that point for a moment, we looked at different technology and the social acceptance of it. So one element was mostly done by Marion Kölle, who is now a group leader in my team, on technology that is body-worn cameras. Of course, that is also partly AI. How does it affect people? You know, a camera becomes a sensor. It has AI functionality. We built together with a team from Saarbrücken an AI-driven, let's say, shutter for a camera to indicate I'm not looking at you. Interesting, I just heard that the upcoming Apple glasses have an indicator of looking or filming and non-filming you. So the major point is this technology comes never alone. That was also with the bystander. And it has a strong effect if the other person is actually accepting me using that technology. Do I look stupid? That may be something. Is that something dangerous? So specifically, I understand in Europe, it was highly on debate. And she explored several aspects. For example, mirroring, in this example, mirroring what the camera sees to show you, you know, I'm not doing any harm. This is the only thing I capture. Or also shutting down by AI. There was an AI-driven decision system who would then say, okay, I'm closing the lid, saying I respect you, or I can actually make gestures. So the social is important, that I have a social role in it, that maybe I have a social say in it, and I anticipate in designing the technology that social acceptability is key for an uptake of technology. The other aspect I want to make about social and pro-social is that there's many situations in which an AI that might be fully autonomous, like a vehicle, need a pro-social interaction to be really successful. In Germany, and I would say probably in different other countries, regulated traffic on motorways is easy, but when it comes to urban neighborhoods, we see a lot of elements of giving back and forth. So it's not by the rule, but it's by also decisions that people make. So we cannot imagine that automated traffic will live without anything we know from real traffic with real humans that is pro-social. It's also about the question if we have a drone, this is in a drone cage in Ben Gurion University, and this is in our university where we jointly worked on the question, how much would an automated vehicle have to communicate to say, okay, let me pass, give me some way. And a very prominent example we have at our university, this is actually a crosswalk, and it's between one of the main buildings and to the Mensa. So in lunchtime, this is a super busy place. And you can imagine what happens here. So cars are piling up. So what makes the whole thing working is that once in a while, you open up a bit and you are pro-social. You say, okay, come, a few cars can go. We did this as a conceptual study and a pedestrian countdown. For example, could that car indicate, look, I'm waiting now for 2 minutes. Why don't you sort of let me go? And you can imagine if it was an automated vehicle instead of a human driver, the system has to be very defensive, and they would never go, and they would never pass that sidewalk, that crosswalk, and would stand there forever. So we see scenarios, and I'm showing you a third one, where the social plays an enormous role in our interaction. And the third area would be pro-social and proactive. So social is not only that it's an automated system that maybe has some social characters. The other side here, the AI, also appears partly as a kind of a social role. We have Ameka. Let me see if the video works. I'm not so sure if that's okay. It's going to be in German. Yeah, maybe not loud enough. Let me see. I play it again. And I stay here with my microphone.
Nicht selbstverständlich passiert.
And what we're seeing here is a humanoid robot. I think it's Ameka. It's called number 9. It's the 9th of that company. And the interesting thing is that the voice you have is a human voice that is being recorded of a person that suffers from what's called depersonalization. That is a health condition. And the idea is that nurses could get this as a training. So to understand how a depersonalized person feels, that it means the person is just explaining in German that, oh, if you lift your arm, it's not that the arm just goes up, it's sort of me and my brain connect. It doesn't feel like a real part of me. And it is a very nice sharing in audio. And then the Ameka is replaying it. So it's going to be, it has a social element. It's kind of replacing the human in that situation. And we also used it as a counterpart in a recent conference. You have more and more home and smart and voice assistants that become like a whatever social partner, you would say, thank you to Alexa, maybe some of you do. And also sometimes we are interacting over a distance and we're using here is the real person, but in virtual reality, we're using an avatar. So we see plenty of elements where there's a social aspect, and it means how that social character is designed, how it interacts, how the interaction is pro-social or non-social, plays an important role. So we cannot just develop AI technology, but we have to understand this social embedded aspect of it. And what I brought today is, I was asked to look into maybe 1 or 2 papers a little bit more deeper, is 2 areas for social interaction in traffic and also in public administration. So imagine the following. So in the future, probably also in London, you will be seeing fully automated vehicles. So I'm sure you had, I don't know if everybody of you drives, but if you drive, you had this plenty of situation where you let someone pass. It can be really by a physical gesture. It can also be by intentionally slowing down, sending smaller signals of, okay, yeah, come on, I'll slow down. You can go out. Recently, I left some space so someone could go on the main road who actually stopped next to me. And I said, okay, what's going on? He knocked on my window. Okay, what is it? Oh, I want to thank you. Normally, people do not give space that I can leave because he was the milk delivery person and he really struggles with getting in and out on the main road. So that is very common when you see and practice a lot of these. But the thing is, if there's no one sitting in that vehicle, would you yield? Would you say, this is well, you probably shouldn't say a stupid car, but at least this is a car that needs to be super defensive. Maybe some of you have looked at the news of the robo-taxis in San Francisco who kind of got stuck and didn't go on, and the mobile network broke down and they couldn't kind of move. So the thing is suppose you would be seeing such a vehicle. Would you yield or would you say, no, come on, that car is programmed to definitely have to wait. So there, why would I wait? So I just go. And we wanted to study how could that vehicle send social signals, so more or less replicate what we are seeing. I think you easily understand the gesture here. Can we replicate this by equipping a car with an eHMI, so an external human-machine interface? And we asked in a pre-study people, so what would you think would be a good signal? What should the car send? What would it show? Is it a display? What should the signal be? And as a result of the first iteration, we saw 3 categories. So we wanted to show, what happens if it's urgent? What would you say would be good social signals? And there was it was a participatory design session, so it could be green, it could be an SOS, and blue. It could be working with a cross. It could be maybe saying I'm really in a very critical time phase. Then there was a design for, there was a design for, okay, can I be pro-social, just to let someone go first, like you open the door and say, come on, you go first. Someone leaves the bus first. What would be signals for that? And finally, can I show I've been waiting for quite some time? And then would it be waiting time indicated here, indicated there? So there were different, and also maybe a color change. So what we then did, we had another session and decided for which of the conditions we want to go. So we did a study in which we want to find out. We have a normal automated vehicle in the, you will see it's a video vignette study. We have a human driver, and we're looking at different kind of pro-social aspects. As I said, the thumbs up, urgency, and I've been waiting. The signs have been chosen rather big because a video vignette study needs to make it easy to see. So of course, in real traffic, it would look a little different, and you would probably not have this huge block on the top of a car, but it was the design that it's clear the video vignette study shows the signal clear enough. And we wanted to also look at 2 things. If it's you and another car, maybe it's not so important who goes first. But if you have a lot of cars behind you, or if on the other side, that single car that is kind of waiting to turn has a pile of cars behind it, does it make a difference if more or less cars are benefiting from that? And we looked at traffic scenarios like you would let someone, cross from their side to the left. Would you allow someone to merge? Or would you allow someone to go across or along a roadblock because there's road work. So you would be the green car, and you would look at situations in these traffic scenarios, and you would decide if you would let people go. And then just to give you the videos that the people saw. So you see a cross scenario. So you see that car, you know, would want to go. So you have a car in front of you. You come to that road. And the question is, would you let, depending on that sign, so there was, of course, several conditions, would you allow that car then to merge? And you can already see a little here, there were cars waiting behind. So would you maybe have sympathy for that car and say, come on, why don't I wait and let that car cross? The other element would be for, merging, you know, so a car comes from the side and you have the feeling that might have been already waiting for 2 minutes. Here it says 1 minute 46. So would I be sympathetic with that car and then would sort of allow it to merge? And finally, there's this roadwork scenario, which you maybe also have often in urban traffic. So you can go because you're on the free side. What would be a reason for you to stop early and allow that car to drive around the roadwork, and sort of for reasons, for example, of timing or urgency? Okay. And what happens is that that we, in the results, it's only a part of the results, that in the results you actually interestingly see not so much difference between a human and an automated vehicle. That was a surprise. So it's more or less the question, how do I react to cars if they if they send social signals? However, we found in different levels of effects that sympathy eliciting cues work in promoting social driving. And I really like that result. If you go back into the literature, there was an early paper I presented. It was not ours, but I presented in a talk about social vehicles. There's an early book by Oscar Julin, Social Media on the Road. It's a very early book, 15 years more, where all of the fancy techniques of automated driving were not there. And at that time already, there was a study, of course not with real cars, saying if the driver before me had a social media signal saying went to the same school, for example, that would elicit sympathy, you know. And then I was giving this to a large group of people who really work into automated driving. And I think, you know, you could see by them looking at me, they didn't really believe me that that would be kind of a future concept. And I'm really happy that kind of we could not just say replicate it in that sense, because at that time it was not automated vehicles, but we could show it might make a difference in our future mixed traffic scenarios, that sympathy as we express it as humans can and could be replicated by automated vehicles. And of course, the urgency is different, you know, from the waiting time from the thumbs up. So of course, there's different levels. You are all used to urgency. We did not use the cross intentionally because it was to be interfered with real ambulances. Also, the blue was not used because we do not want to interfere with known signals of real urgency of a person being in danger, or if a car has to go there. So that was a very interesting first work. So we found, no, this is a video and vignette study, so it's not on the street yet, that individual street automated vehicles similar to human-driven vehicles and sympathy eliciting cues work. I strongly believe that we will equip automated vehicles with stuff like that. When we started looking into exterior HMIs, it was still in the automotive industry very in the beginning. And now if you see how many outside displays these cars have, or if they even project, I recently had a rental car where a Mercedes-Benz was actually projecting their star sort of on the outside of the door that you know where you would want to enter, that has changed dramatically. And if you will think this is a situation which will increase, and there's a nice cartoon that Hatice Sahin, who is a major investigator and PhD student working on this, I know everybody's commute became more pleasant, but since driverless cars, but this is too much. So you see someone who's sort of going in a pool. But some people have been at previous automotive UI ductual seminars, and I think there's a lot of things going on where we will sit in cars that have a partly or full automated, it will be partly or fully automated driving. And as soon as your car can do something, you will for sure start working, reading, watching movies. So you will not be this 7 seconds up and then I will take over. So it will be a continuous transition into automated vehicles. But if they then then they will be in a street where there will be not only automated vehicles. There's no way that the whole thing will transition in once. One idea was that you have this one lane for automated vehicles, and then you have the other lanes for maybe like manual driven cars, but this is also not going to work. I just walked from Tottenham Court to here. So it's an easy look into traffic. I don't see it's going to be so super highly regulated. There will always be unregulated situations, and you will need a sign if that car will do something or not, if it will wait or if it wants to go first. So I see this as a natural development. So even though we consider social as a human, this would be a claim that social signals should be also considered for automated non-human systems. And the second way why the question is how social should a machine be is when it comes to explaining discretionary decisions. That is work mostly done by my PhD student, Saja Al-Junaidi. So assume you go to an office. We have to admit Germany is not so good in digitization of their services. I hear some laughter from the corner. Maybe someone is confirming this. So we're a little bit behind, Of course, I'm giving a talk of it, so that we are making progress, And the thing is, of course, we are thinking of which services could be digitized. Here you see a classic situation. Of course, in the local government, there would be a person helping you with whatever passports, immigration, anything around your car. So that is currently existing. What we see is that so far in the democracy, we would say, if I want to have a service as a citizen of this democracy, I can demand. What is common, and I don't know the UK law here, is what is called discretionary decisions. So if you walk up to some civil servant here, you can have in certain cases a range where you can take the decision. It can be a fine or no fine. It can be an extension or no. It can be accepting this without additional proof. I recently had a very, very simple case. I was actually, I was filing an open petition because our local government wanted to cut money for the schools, and I was objecting. So I found someone else and submitted an open petition, and then I went to that council in the evening and to present it. And then I wanted to present it, and I needed to show my passport because I need to prove that I live there. And said, well, no, I don't find it. And then, of course, naturally, it's like half of the room would know me, and maybe not half, but at least some people. So then she did this kind of, yeah, okay, kind of, we trust you that this is, so this was more or less also kind of a discretion. We said, of course, I trust you that you are you are not only a citizen, but also you live within the boundaries of the city. And here, that is very common. And this is often a way, you can have subjective decision. That means it's not a machine. The civil servant is not a machine saying rule-based decisions. There's a way. So the question now is what happens if decisions move into a machine? So we have a very nice project with my social science colleague, Professor Tepe in Oldenburg. Where we think, what if this moves to a kiosk? a self-service key. That is easy if it's a rule-based decision, you know, if it's just on, off, no problem. What happens if the decision here was discretionary decisions, and could such a machine do this? And this is not like a fiction, it's gonna happen. And the question for us was, would we go as far to really giving discretionary decisions to an AI? And what would people think about it? So technically, there's a lot of implementation to be done to really make AI-based decision here, but we assume that this is gonna be happening in public services anyway. But how do people think about it? What social characters would such an AI have? So far, what we see is that we have a lot of research about how these systems could be made on the technical side, from the user interface side. But the question is, you know, how would a person perceive it? Do they think they like it? Well, of course, there might be some just forced to do it, you know. How do we want to do maybe a smooth transition between this individual, a machine, and maybe there is someone else in the background? That is kind of still an open question. And we took really, I have to say, it took a very long time to find and design an experiment that had the possibility to really grasp that whole thing, because it needed to be confined enough to study it, but could not be super artificial, because it needed to relate to individuals' understanding of how civil servants and how these services work. So what happens in the German system, if you have an ID card, and if it is expired before you renew it, you have to pay, or you could pay, a 15 € fine. So according to the German law, it is, well, partly not necessarily illegal, but it could be fined if you renew your passport or your ID card too late. But it's a discretionary decision. So we designed, this is the first prototype, the second one is under revision. This is why I'm not showing it here. But this is the first prototype where we designed a system where your task is, in the sense of to use this interactive self-service keys of the municipality of Oldenburg to extend your passport. And we designed a dialogue system and wanted to know, as a research question, would it matter if I have a dialogue with that system? Because we wanted to study satisfaction and decision fairness. So would it matter if, like, you know, here it's like an illustration where the person says, what? You know, and then maybe there's kind of blah, blah, there is some explanation, and the person says, okay, yeah, maybe that's good. It sounds like a simple thing, but we wanted to know, is there a significant effect in that? And we studied in an experimental design in a Wizard of Oz experiment, 4 different situations. So you want to say, okay, is there a dialogue or not? And how much is it dependent if you have to pay the 15 € or not? In the study design, there was an interesting thing. So to make it realistic with regard to the money, so in the beginning, you would have to play a game. By that game, you earned points, and that points you could use to pay your fine. So some people would get, who are not fined, get all of their points, plus, you know, like 5 €. The others would get only the smaller fraction, because they're using 15 of their points, or their 20 points, to the machine. So that was there was a long discussion on how to make it like a little realistic, that there is a fine. You know, I'm getting less. You know, I'm getting less than someone else who did the same study. And we had 17 female and 11 male persons. It was still a young age, so we cannot kind of claim this is like an across all ages system. And it was done by pre-recorded different types of answers and dialogues to make sure that it's not the voice or the individual tone influencing, but it was pre-recorded. So the dialogue was in a lot of different settings, was pre-recorded and then manually played by the experimenter who was the Wizard of Oz. Okay, so is it right? Yeah. So we did a qualitative analysis. So we did a lot of observation here. And we found certain themes which are also not probably super surprising, partly confirming what was there in other fields of research. So an explanation of the decision is needed. It was interesting that those who got the fine, or maybe not so surprising, those who got the fine were not so interested in an explanation than those who were fined, naturally. It was for them very interesting, you know, if I am included in the decision on it. There were some people who thought, well, this is anyway just a fake, you know, they're just saying something to make me happy. Or is this really a system that would be interesting to me, is interested in me? So am I really part of the decision making? And that was actually two ways. One were really believing that this kind of that I was really heard, whereas others thought it's more or less just like a, you know, a fake, or at least like a standard answer that is trying to make me happy. People think it's fair, but it was interesting that the tendency was that the machine was not considered to be less fair, was not considered to be more more closer to fraud or open to fraud. So it was very clear that a human system could be easily replaced by that. And also that the people had this understanding that it is also an acceptance of the law, because we are all so the machine would still act within the discretion, and discretion is something that is part of the law. So it would also be acceptance of artificial AI-driven discretion, and not only of a human discretion alone. Well, we did some tests and analysis of the fairness perception of the design. So it is not affected by the dialogue occurrence. It is very much affected by the personal gain. That's, of course, I remember a completely different situation where, like, in an exam, I went to the discretion of the examiner and asked for one single more point. Why did I fail? I was 1 point away from passing, whereas my colleague and friend was getting it. I was not getting it. And of course, I felt much more negatively because my personal gain was not achieved, even though I had thought I was giving a good explanation and was discussing here. So, but what was really important, even though this was the first prototype, and we are working, or we already have a newer version with a much more detailed discussion between the AI and the human, the dialogue makes an enormous effect. So you should implement a machine that makes a decision, that gives you an explanation. So at the end, so why is your card expired? Does the dialogue even matter? Yes, it is definitely relevant. Even though this is an early system, it makes a difference. So we should take this into account, that humans aim and strive for explanations. At the other hand, we need to be really clear that we are talking about a tiny little thing. It's an ID card, you know, 15 euros, maybe not a big thing for everyone. No, we have literature, and we looked also into literature where this is about maybe your job, or it's about money for social services, where it really goes into your everyday lives, where your reputation is a card. So you might see completely different, or at least different answers on that. What we really found, and this is why we in the next prototype made it even more visible, and it goes back to the early slides I showed, people do not necessarily know what and where this AI is. For them, it's just a system. No, in the next prototype, we even made it even more clear to say, look, this is a system. I am an AI-based system. I can make decisions on my own. So really to put this forward, because before that, it didn't look much different from a machine where you can buy kind of maybe a train ticket from, you know. So that was also very difficult, and it's not easy. So where is the AI? I don't see it. So how much would we have to design system to show it? There's probably also people who would argue you should hide it, because if it's not necessary to show it, why would you show it? So how much of the AI and the decision and the discretionary decision needs to be really shown? This was only one aspect of it. It was interesting that only those, who paid a fine looked more into it, what the machine did, what the machine said, and if it was an AI-based discretionary decision, where those who were waived the fine said, well, okay, fine, off I go, I have extended it, I get my 25 euros and I'm off. So that's something I would like to mention here, and I find super interesting. So first results, so a dialogue is definitely needed, and we could measure that it increases the satisfaction and the perceived fairness. It has a positive effect, but we saw a stronger need on explaining how the decision was made, and also intense discussion of how much did it depend on my explanations. And the case there was no dialogue, so the personal gain is the measure of the fairness and saturation. So do I get the fine or do I not get the fine? That was, I think that was also said before. So there's, just to conclude this, there's two aspects to it. I would certainly say we will definitely move AI to many everyday systems. These will, on one end, make decisions for us, but we will need an explanation for it. And this explanation is not probably only rational, it will probably also be social. So how much does the machine explain itself? How much does the machine itself need a pro-social interaction by me? That is something we want to research in more detail, and this is what I brought here today. And I always conclude with my thanks. This is not my work, I'm sure there's a lot of PhD students in the room. This is the work of my students today. It was mostly Hatice Sahin Ippoliti and Saja Al-Junaidi, who are both two PhD students who work in pro-social automated vehicles and in AI decisions in public services. And as also everyone, I have a lot of project partners, collaborations, funding agency. I'm also grateful who are supporting all of this work. And then I am open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we start with the questions, though, I'm taken by the little Lego characters there. It reminds us of our video when we were at Daxtor last time. We made great.
And I'm always excited if I look back, how often such early ideas really then kind of turn into research, into practice, even though they look very crafted in the first moment.
But I'm going to start with a question, actually. I rarely ask a question. That little dialogue. So if I understood it, it's the AI thing that you're talking, is the agent you're talking to is offering you an explanation or not about why they're giving you the fine or not, or why they've chosen to waive it. But I think what you said in your story, though, often with these things, what people want is, when we're dealing with those situations, people want to go and tell their story. Like it's almost like they want to plead their case. So I was curious about whether that seems like the other thing to manipulate or look at is whether or not the user, walks up to the robot and says, look, come on, give me a break. I was late, I got up late, it's not my fault. Here's all the reasons why you should make an exception just for me.
That is looked into in the subsequent, exactly. So there's two elements. One was I wanted to make my case, maybe not in a long story, but at least I want to make my case. The second is, did the same explanation work for others? So some people had this idea of justice. So if I say, well, my mother-in-law had to go to the hospital and I was taking care. So a really sad story maybe, versus I just forgot it in my pocket. you know, maybe you wouldn't do that. So what matters, and exactly, and then how much of an explanation is, or how much of a conversation is the other person, the AI, actually listening? Say, oh, that is a bad case. You know, we are not at that level, because it's a Wizard of Oz experiment, and also because maybe in the future ChatGPT will then create.
ChatGPT will give you the feeling that you've been listened to.
I think that when it was run first time, that was not as far with ChatGPT, but I think that is definitely the next level. And what always was the case, people wanted to have an exit strategy, that they want to have an appeal. So that would be like, assume you have several of these counters, maybe distributed in town. There would be a way, maybe you can, I don't know, press a button, get connected to someone, or maybe walk up at some point to in the municipality. Say it. Municipality. Thank you. To make your case. Yeah, I think there needs the people still wanted to have like a backup and in a real person.
I think you're right. People just want to be heard, don't they? That's what you see, like, you know, students appealing. You know, you brought up students appealing grades. It might not change the outcome, but they just want to be heard and listened to.
Yeah. But then it still would be interesting, you know, if they are listened and they said, let's assume you go to the same machine and then you talk to your friends. What?
Yeah.
I got it waived. And what did you tell them? And then you start maybe even train. That is interesting, you know. Then people start gaming the whole system. Probably that's also happening.
For sure. Gerald, can I pass the microphone down to you guys here?
Thanks. Building on Duncan's point, it seems to me like there are two related reasons for why the idea of automating discretion is not solvable until we get to, unless we get to kind of ex machina levels. So I really like the focus on prosociality, but in the case where you went to the council office and they said basically, oh, come on, it's Susanne, that's to do with that social relationship. So there's a kind of mutual recognition there, and they're drawing on various bits of tacit knowledge that are to do with that relationship. I think one problem is I wonder kind of within the AI system, it's not like actually they are following a rule, but they haven't said what it is. There's lots of things that they can't anticipate that they're drawing on. With the AI system, I guess to turn it into a question, I kind of wonder who it represents, because like I used to be a teacher, and I'd work in a school, and okay, do I always have to have my top button done up? Well, if I'm the deputy head, then yes, I must always have my top button done up. And there's all these kind of embodiments where in my social relationships, there's certain, there's different power relations as well that I've got with others, and the discretion is really caught up with the power and sociality in which I'm kind of entwined.
I think at least one aspect was interesting, that, well, in that, you know, in that limited experiments, always, you know, all the experiments are limited within their scope, what you can do, but it was still interesting that, for example, the results showed that this relationship you showed, you know, you just said, okay, Susanne comes up and maybe there's a trust relationship, or you have any kind of an encounter with an individual where it looks the social thing that is between two humans could be stronger and better interpreted. That was interesting, that the people did not think like this of the AI basis. They were actually in the same way happy. They were also worried that the person, you know, could also have a bad day. You know, there was not an expectation that the human to human encounter would be better or fairer than that one with the machine, because there was obviously, well, it's hard to say for the study, some inner trust that it's still like a machine. It would be a machine that is within the legal system. So there is probably some, you know, basic trust that the system would not treat you badly, you know. So that was, as for me, it was always the people would say, no, I want to talk to a human and I don't want to do the machine. The favor of the machine and the perceived satisfaction and fairness perception was very high also for the automated decision making. However, as you said, you know, how much of an explanation do I have to give? What happens if it's really continuing a discussion? And for me, what is more important, what happens if the fine is really high? You know, now we're talking about a parking ticket. Probably, maybe London is more expensive than that one, but yeah. So that's, I think there are several nuances on that. What was really difficult for us was the design of the study. In the beginning, we thought we want to compare it with a real life situation. But then we could not replicate it with real passports because that was not legally not possible. Then we were worried if we run it with different people, how much is it dependent on the actor? You know, how can we train the actor? So this is why we finally went with the design only on the purely digital kiosk and refrain from a comparison because we found too many confounding variables in this kind of comparison. We also thought of this same thing, book return in the university library. And if your book has like a
damage.
Yeah, kind of a little damage, and let's assume like a camera-based 3D system would see that. But then we went back to the municipality. It was very, for us, if you have ideas, it was very challenging to design the system that's realistic enough that the fine really hurts a bit, you know, while not going into really like in a real proper public service system, because that was not possible for legal and privacy reasons.
Hi, thanks, Enrico Costanza. I can totally relate to the challenge of like designing studies where you try to make everything fit, and yes, that's fun and frustrating at the same time.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting, this idea that your participants seem to expect the AI to be fair, to be machine-like. That's something that also emerged in some of our studies. Probably most of them not yet published. But I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the context, because I'm not familiar at all with this idea of like the discretion around a fine. Like, what would participants imagine the decision is based on? What is it based on in real life? Like, when civil servants make this decision, is it based on you having a good excuse, or is it just based on them having a good day?
Well, probably something that's in between. So actually, this is well, of course, there's a framework of discretion where you, of course, it should not be you giving or waiving the fine because this is your cousin. So I think there's like natural elements of compliance and fairness probably somewhere in the German law. But it could be an experience saying it has been just 2 weeks, you know, it was not sitting in your drawer for half a year. It would be maybe a person that, well, it's my anticipation. It could be a person that is rarely, you know, making it because it's like on the outskirts of town, it's difficult to get there, or a person that said, I'm working shifts and I cannot come in the typical opening hour. I think there would be a lot of, which to me, it sounded like a very believable, plausible explanation of a civil person, like a citizen who says, yeah, I failed, but was it so bad? So I think, but there's no rule, because we were asked by social sciences if we could not kind of, you know, categorize the rules. If you could interviews, why are you doing this, and then implement the rules, because then if you do that, then you could at least go and implement it as a rule-based system. You would not have to do an AI. But the idea was, even though it's very legally extremely challenging, can we put some discretion into that? In Germany, that is, I don't know if you have this in here, for example, you can imagine that if you are caught while, let's say, typing on your phone in the car, and then there's a car passing by and observing you, and then once you see them, you said, you know, then they could say, okay, I just drive on, you know. If you continue not to even see them, they might sort of then come across you. So there's like this civil police cars, and then they put up the sign, please follow me. And they said, look, I looked at you twice, you know, you didn't see it. And now I made the discretion and I make the decision. So this is, I can either let you go with that illegal thing. And there's a lot of elements, at least to my understanding, in the German law, where someone who is a civil servant can let you get away with it more or less, you know.
And thanks, that's really helpful. And in your study, do you have a sense about like what participants imagined the decision was based on? Did you tell them anything?
No, it was not. No, they were definitely interested in to see what the decision was. That was definitely a question, because that was the first study of a now sequence of more. Exactly. So they would have wanted to know what the decision was made on. But of course, again, more if there was a personal loss, that they lost the 15 euros in their final reward versus those who had a personal gain. Yeah, people wanted to know, but it was not. It was also mentioned that, yeah, okay, fine, it's a machine, it's a legal system. I didn't get it. It was still kind of okay-ish on that level, as I continue to say, on a level of a 15 euro fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I think we're at a good time, actually.
yeah, I need to
Right. So thank you very much one more time.
Thank you. Yeah. And everything is on online in publications, so you can see more. There's also more details and pictures and drawings in the papers. And come visit us. It's only one flight away. So Oldenburg is in the north of Germany, so you are very welcome to join us if you are around, or if you're close to Hamburg, Bremen. Then Oldenburg is just around the corner.
Susanne's back is amazing.